obviously all young kids want to learn to fish, and it's not always the best idea to take a small kid to a big rock or a big strong ocean and tell them to start fishing. So ideally you want to ease them into the process, teach them from small. So the best place I suggest where you teach a young kid to fish is when it comes to saltwater. If you've got a estuary or saltwater lake in the area, start there, teach them the basics there, and then if you go onto the beach, find an area where it's nice and calm and safe, where you can teach them the basics, and from there gradually get them into fishing the rougher water and the more dangerous areas. Alright, so let's chat about estuaries and what's the benefits of starting in the estuaries with young kids. So obviously you're in a controlled environment, you're not out there on the beach in the middle of nowhere where there's no pollution blocks or you're far away from your vehicle. So if the kiddies get hungry or thirsty, everything's right there. If it gets cold and windy, they can go sit in the car for a while. So the estuary is such a nice controlled environment to get them used to fishing. The last thing you do is just go throw them out there on the beach in the middle of nowhere and it's windy and cold and miserable and they don't enjoy the outing. So one of the nice things about catching grunter is actually making the bait. And I can remember as a young kid, it was myself, my brother's job to go with my dad and pump the prawns. It was always a muddy, messy story, and it was quite fun to do it. Yeah, so obviously on our little kiddie trips, we're taking our youngsters going fishing, especially the type of fishing we're doing, or cracker prawns or pink prawns. It's very, very important. So we missed it out a little bit, but we ended up with enough prawns for a little session. And so the next step now is to get to the right water and catch a few fish with these prawns. Right, so when you fish these estuary systems for grunter, you can actually go look for the structure where they would be. The type of structure they do like, they obviously feed on these sandbanks, and what they eat on those sandbanks are those same little cracker prawn that we call cracker prawn, or the brown mud prawn or bloodworm. So they'll be feeding on those banks, and every now and then you're lucky enough to actually see them tailing, where they plow their noses into that mud and try and get those prawns out. So sometimes you're lucky and you can actually see the fish and you literally cast towards where you saw the tail and you might catch that fish as well. So after arriving at our spot and seeing all these grunter tailing on the bank, we definitely knew we were fishing the right area, and it wasn't very long after that Michael hooked his first fish. Alright, so some fish species obviously got sharp spines, and the grunter especially, he's got a lot of spines all over him, and on his gill plates here he's got these sharp, almost call them blades, that can really cut your hands badly if you don't know how to handle it. So when you're fishing for species like grunter with the youngsters, I think the first few fish, just show them how to hold it for them for the photo, until they've learned how to hold the fish, fingers under the belly, not holding it tight over the gills or over those fins that can actually stab into your hand and hurt you. So just teach them how to hold it, and then the same way you hold it, take a picture and just release it back in the water. Just small little tips, but it can't be fun for a little kid to get stabbed in the hand by a grunter's fin or be cut by the gill plate. So just help the kiddies with that till they've learned how to do it, and then after they can do it themselves. Alright, let's get this little grunter back in the water. Right, so sticking with estuaries, there's quite a few flatfish species that you can target in these estuaries in South Africa. Among them are species like blue rays, diamond rays, lesser sand sharks, etc. So this is a nice little opportunity for the youngsters to learn how to target these species. It's a nice flat, calm environment, so if they can learn how to target them in the estuaries systems, by the time they go over to the sea, they've already got an idea as to how to target these fish, and it's just so much easier for them when they go over to the surf to target these species. Right, so obviously fishing in these estuaries, your baits are exactly the same as you do in the ocean, but they're just smaller. So instead of using a big mackerel head, you can use a small little mackerel head or a small sardine or red eye or mullet head, build exactly the same bait, just scale everything down because you're targeting smaller species. So it's a nice opportunity for them to learn how to build these baits. So when they go into the surf one day, just scale up, use bigger baits, bigger hooks, bigger tackle, and they already know how to do it. So it's a very nice little opportunity for them to learn how to catch these species. That's about 20 minutes after we arrived at the spot and put the baits out. Little Michael had a bite on his rod, and it was just amazing to see how he loved that, the bite initially, and then hooking the fish and fighting it. He was so excited to land that fish, and it just sort of brought that nice feeling of fishing back into me, and it made me realize why we love this sport so much. And seeing it in a young guy like him, knowing that one day he's going to become a great angler, was just something amazing to see. Spike on the tail there, and this little young one, you can actually come over and sting your hand. So you've got to be very careful with these ones. Especially the small ones, they're the worst. Alright, so let's move on to fishing on the beach with the young kiddies. So obviously you're going to pick an area where it's nice and calm. You don't want huge strong waves with a big sea, which is dangerous. So find a nice little calm beach, and in the eastern Southern Cape area there's a lot of areas where there's nice flat long banks, and the type of species you'll target there are species like your lesser sand shark, little cob, stearnies, blacktail, shad. There's so many different species you can catch. So the species that you would like to target fishing with the youngsters are those species that feed quite close and within range of casting for the kiddies. So when you're fishing in an area, I suggest that you teach the kiddies one bait at a time. So find a little bait that works in that area. Like we had this little specific little chocker bait, long thin strip. I showed little Michael how to do it. It's a very easy bait to do, and from experience I know that bait would catch all the species that's feeding in that shore zone. So don't confuse him with 10, 12 different types of baits. Teach him one little bait per day, something that can learn how to do, catch a fish in it, and build their confidence slowly like that. Right, yes, I'm here on the beach with my little nephew, and he loves fishing, so I thought I'll take him with today, and I think he's got something on here that's not a lesser, to be honest with you. Let's see. Alright, so little Michael built his little choco bait and he actually cast it for himself, and I think it was 5 minutes later he had this bite and his rod started bouncing up and down. And I thought to myself, this doesn't look like a lesser that ate his bait, and he landed a nice little spearney or big nose grunter, obviously his first one in the surf, and he was very, very happy with that little fish. Well done, Michael. How did it bite? How did it bite?
Very strong today.
I think we should try and catch a bigger one. I'm sure we're going to find a bigger one today.
Yeah.
Alright, let's get the hook out, take a photo, get back in the water quickly. You want to take the hook out? Give me. I've got the fish, take out the hook. So a little suggestion I can give you guys, if you're fishing the surf and conditions are a bit rough, so you got a bit of line pulling, a bit of slack line, and then the line's tight again, the kiddie's not always going to feel that bite, especially when you're fishing for these small fish. So put a little circle hook on, so he's going to stand and talk to you, and he's not going to be in contact with the rod and concentrating that much. So with a circle hook, that fish will swallow the hook, and when he feels a bite, he'll tighten up, and normally with a circle hook, it'll be in the corner of the fish's mouth, and it's very unlikely for that hook to come out. So I suggest use a little circle hook. You can put a J hook on, but the chances of him losing a fish on the J hook if he didn't concentrate and miss the bite is quite big. So a little circle hook works like a bomb. When the fish is there, gets hooked and it can't get off, and even while he's fighting it and he gives a bit of slack line by mistake, that hook won't fall out. Right, so the area we fished, I initially thought on his first throw he's going to catch a lesser sand shark. There's a lot of them in that area and it just looked perfect for them. So Michael built in a little bait, casted it onto the bank again, and 5-6 minutes later I saw the rod bending, and this was a proper fish, and he landed his first lesser sand shark. Right, just when you with your youngsters and they learn to fish, I think there's something you teach them from young is how to actually pull fish and fight fish. Often with the kiddies, if they hook a fish, you stand and wind it even though it's taking line. So let's teach them to use a rod, wind down, pick up the slack, pull up with a rod, wind down, pick up the slack, pull up with a rod. That'll get them in the right rhythm of fighting fish. And the nice thing about a lesser sand shark is that type of species that actually fights back. It's not that easy just to pull them. So you need to actually wind into the fish, use a rod to pull the fish and continue in that motion. So it's a very simple thing, but if you can teach them from young to do that, that'll really help them when they get a bit bigger and start catching big fish. Well done! Was it a strong fish? Hey? Oh, your arm's tired. My little trip with my nephew Michael was actually a very nice memorable trip. It reminded me of the years when I fished with my own son and all the special times we had together. So I really enjoyed it. I'm sure Michael enjoyed it and learned a lot. So guys, for you out there that want to go and spend a bit of quality time with the youngsters, this is a perfect opportunity to do it. I hope I've taught you a few tips and you can go and actually practice when you fish with them. So go out there, enjoy it, and spend quality time with the youngsters.